I'm not going to get into the mechanics of TIF funding and all the complexities of it, that bore you and we'd all be going to sleep, except that it's a $5 million hit that you're going to have to make up. The $5 million is county money that stays in the center of the city. In the 30 years of the CRA, not one dime of that money has ever come into D3. And therefore, it could be very parochial of me to say, let it expire, and then there will be a larger pot of money upon which to draw for projects in the 3rd district. I'm not the guy that's going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you that extending the CRA, the Community Redevelopment Agency, truly is the heartbeat of this city, because downtown is its cultural core, its economic core, its restaurants, its galleries. You know downtown as well as I know downtown. Without the continuation of the CRA, we're going to see profound, and I hate to say it, and profoundly ugly changes downtown without the CRA. So I'm not going to be parochial here. I'm going to try to say that yes, we could use it in D3, but the city as a whole can use it more. The other area that's specific to D3, but also in a way specific to the other 2 districts as well, Shelley touched on it, is infill development. In D3, we're seeing a lot of tear downs, we're seeing a lot of new construction. Some of it is pleasing to the neighbors, some of it is not pleasing to the neighbors. There is concern that architectural standards may be imposed, that's from the architect side. There is concern that we're pricing the neighbors out of their neighborhood, that's another concern. But each one of those issues in infill development are going to be decided one by one as the City Commission sits as the deciders on planning issues. And there you want somebody stable, neighborhood-oriented, familiar with the historical patterns in D3, as well as the other districts of the city, to make reasoned and, frankly, sane decisions about land use.
Thank you, everybody. And so the second question, we'll start with Shelley. In Sarasota, elected officials seem to be put into one of 2 camps, either supporting neighborhoods or supporting development. Where do you fit?
I fit in the middle, and let me tell you why. I have the benefit of owning a business in one district and living in another. And through that opportunity, I've had the unique experience of being able to work with all the parts of our city to see how we can make things work together. And in terms of development and in terms of strategic planning, I think those experiences will bring us together. One of the things that we need to look at is sometimes you get that label of either being anti-neighborhood or pro-development, and I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I think we have to look at each parcel, look at each opportunity, section by section, project by project, neighborhood by neighborhood. And one of the things that I am strongly committed to is making sure that the voices of our neighbors and our residents are heard. What I realize as a commissioner, assuming that things go well, is that I will speak for the people and not tell people what they want to hear, which means meetings, it means communication, it means feedback, it means study, it means analysis to come to an appropriate decision. So I don't think that there's a one or the other. I think that they go together. And I think that through collaboration and communication, we can reach the best consensus. And sometimes there may be decisions that are made process by process. We may have to start with one area and continue to move forward. It may be a response to development that is done for the betterment of neighborhoods. It may be a neighborhood decision that will preserve the character for walkability, for pedestrians, for bicycle traffic. So I think they do go together.
Thank you.
Well, my answer to that question is yes. I would say yes. I also consider myself both. I am very pro-neighborhood. I love the neighborhoods. I like to think of Sarasota almost as London. Those of you who've been in London know that that's a city of towns. And that's where its charm lays. And that's why our neighborhoods are so important. But I also realize, as do most of the neighborhood people, that there is growth. There's going to be growth, and we might as well work with it. Good developers, people who want the best for the city, are here to be worked with, and that's our job. As a commissioner, you have to do what's best for the city. It's as simple as that. That's where the decision comes down. There is that point at which the neighborhoods may not like what is proposed, and the builder may be fighting against what the neighborhood would like to have. I do believe you can work with both of them. In this period of campaigning and getting to know the commission, one of the things I've been able to do was to meet the heads of the neighborhoods and to meet some of the builders as well. What I found was that there are an awful lot of reasonable people out there, people who just want the best for the city. And that's what we should want as city commissioners. That's what I want. And I really do believe that we can make that work.
I have some pretty solid neighborhood credentials, and I have some pretty solid credentials in facing huge mega developments coming into a community that were completely out of scale. So I've seen that movie. I've had a sort of a starring role in that movie at one point. It's not a movie I'd care to see repeated in many other neighborhoods around. Simple fact, almost no one lives in a house they built with their own hands. Almost everyone lives in a house built by a developer. And so if you want the city to be static, just stop developing it. You have to have development to have a vital, vibrant city moving forward. It's absolutely essential. But it has to be done with the neighbors in mind, because they're going to have to live next to and among whatever is developed. It's a balancing act, it's a juggling act, and every circumstance, every situation is different because it's on a different street, it's in a different flood zone, it's in a different zoning district, and that's why we have a planning board. But before we have the planning board, we have the ability to have neighborhood meetings where developers can come and explain their projects. It's very important for neighbors to go to these meetings. We have a good process in place, but are people using it and utilizing it? And if you think the process needs changing, all you have to do is speak up, because we are a flexible community. Do I hear the bell? No, I hear another bell. Well, let me just say this. We also have areas where we need proactive change. Change perhaps led by the government, or at least instigated by the government. Affordable housing is a critical need in this community and has been for decades. Alta Vista's neighborhood found an area owned by the school board and proposed it for affordable housing in our neighborhood, and worked as hard as we could to get that project to come alive. We located sources of funding, we had an architect draw up planning, we got the zoning rearranged, and then the bottom fell out of the economy. Neighborhoods can be proactive in assessing the kinds of needs and changes that they want to see in their neighborhood. And I highly recommend that you do that, to become involved in the future of your neighborhood and not assume that you can leave it up to the 5 people on the city commission to find the answer when the answer lies within you. So, good citizenship is more than voting for a city commissioner once every 4 years. Good citizenship is you being deeply involved in the roots and the fabric of your community.
Thank you. Will you pass the microphone down to Liz, please? Me too.
Well, just like everybody has said, they are not mutually exclusive. I've had the opportunity to also meet with many of the neighborhood association leaders as well as some of the developers, and we can't stop growth. We can't put a fence around Sarasota. Other people want to move here just the same as we did. And so what we need to make sure of is when the growth occurs, that we do it right and we use smart growth principles. And most developers are going to want to do that too, because they want to make a project that people want to come to and want to live in. So I don't think we can be put in a box as pro-business or pro-neighborhood. I think I'm pro both, and, you know, everybody else on the panel said the same thing.
Good, thank you. Down to Eileen, please. If you're elected, what issues would you put on a list to tackle in the short term, say within the first year of your term? And what issues would you put on a list to tackle in the long term, say 5 years out?
Short term is traffic, which I've already put on the list to be addressed because I think it's an immediate need considering the amount of building that's going on. Also, I feel like I'm repeating myself from before. Also, the homeless issue, of course, is going to be tackled and is overdue for being tackled, but it had to wait to be tackled the right way, and I do think that we're heading in that direction. Infrastructure is a problem. Affordable housing is a big problem. It's becoming more and more obvious that affordable housing, and I'm sure a lot of you saw the article in the newspaper today, those of us on the commission were made aware of it quite a while ago. Affordable housing is a major, major problem. These are the people who work at the hospitals. They may be you, they may be me. They need a place to live that allows them to work in our community. If they can't, well, then we're just on our own. That also, by the way, affordable housing also will address some of the problems of the homeless issues. If people are paying more than 30% of their income, then chances are if the job gets meager or disappears during the off-season, you're going to find those people on the street. So affordable housing is one of the major issues. The Bayfront in the future is very, very important, and the near term, the planning part of the Bayfront, the way the planning is managed is very significant. It's important that no one be allowed to take it over, that the city controls the way the Bayfront develops. Other than that, it's infrastructure issues, affordable housing, the homeless situation, the traffic situation, and controlling the growth so that it keeps up with the infrastructure that we already have.
We had a third category, short-term, medium-term, long-term. Short-term, we have to balance the city's budget. Last year, we dipped into a fund and took out $3 million. That fund was devoted to retiree health care benefits. And we use that money to balance the budget we're living on right now. Right? This cannot continue. So, the immediate and very difficult issue is how are we going to live within our means? Because we haven't done this for years now. We have gone into reserves year after year after year, and the reserves have been depleted. And now we're starting to dip into other accounts to balance the budget. It just can't go on that way. So that's my short-term goal for this year, is to try to put in place a budget balancing mechanism that's equitable. The second issue, medium term, would be, again, affordable housing. This is an immediate issue for us, but it's going to be, there's mechanisms that are going to be put in place. There may need some property that needs to be rezoned. There may be some property that needs to be put on the future land use map for proposed change to facilitate affordable housing. If we can't cross that barrier, the people who ensure the quality of our lives are going to be living so far away they can't get here to assure the quality of our lives. And it's just that simple. For the long term, there is a question of sea level rise. We are talking about putting millions and millions of dollars on the Bayfront. And I'll wait to see the plans. I hope that they just knock my socks off. But I don't want to put millions and millions of dollars of public investment in an area that is vulnerable to sea level rise. What are going to be the requirements to protect that property from any sea level rise should we desire to pour millions of dollars of public investment into that property? That's an issue that hasn't been brought to the table yet and may not get to the table because this is a long-term endeavor. But this is also a long-term problem we need to think about today. I'm a member of the Tourist Development Council. One of the things we do is spend the tourist bed tax money, and part of what it goes for is beach renourishments. My very first meeting Larry Reeford, who is the coastal zone manager for the county, reacted to a request from Venice. We need some of that money. And he said, okay, well, here it is. But that's the last of it. And I asked Reeford later, I said, you've scraped the bottom of the barrel on beach renourishment money from the tourist development tax? Is that the first time ever? And his answer was yes. We've never done that before. So just renourishing the beaches is starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel for financing now. Call it what you will, but it sounds like sea level issues to me, and we need to address them in the long term. This cannot be put off.
Well, as I talked about earlier, in the short term, it's going to be the homeless issue, because that's what I've heard from most residents that they would like to see resolved. And I'm very happy that the city manager has come up with an 8-point plan to implement in the short term and actually the long term to deal with this issue. So one of the first things I'm going to do is work with him to make sure we can make some of these things happen. And as I talked about, the second issue for most people, short term, is the traffic congestion. And certainly getting affordable housing and getting housing downtown that's affordable will help with that issue in terms of the traffic congestion. Certainly there's many other steps we need to take, and the Metropolitan Planning Organization is working on steps to cut down on the traffic. The development of the bayfront around the Van Wezel is huge for long term, because I think that development is going to change the face of Sarasota forever, and we have to make sure we do it right. And sea level rise would be one of the things you would take into consideration when you're making the plans and when you're working with someone to make that development happen. So that's our long-term goal, along with redevelopment of the North Trail, which I'm seeing some good things happening up there, and the people up there have some really good ideas about what they need, and keeping the downtown very vibrant and thriving, and those are the things that I'll be focusing on.
One of the first issues that I think we need to address is repairing our relationship with the county in terms of moving things forward. I've said from the beginning of my candidacy that I favor more joint meetings between the city and county commissions so that we can discuss strategic issues that affect both the city and the county. I don't think that we are as far apart as we think we are. I think that there are goals on the city and the county side that want to address the homeless crisis, that want to address transportation, that want to address our multimodal issues. And for whatever reasons, and you can speculate as to what you are, it doesn't matter what the reasons are, they're preventing our city and our county from moving forward. So that's one of the first things that I would deal with. In short, second is part of a budget issue, but more specifically is dealing with our pension crisis for retired firefighters and first responders. That, as you know, we've talked about, has had a deficit because we've had to use funds to balance the budget. I think that we have to look at smarter ways to be able to address our issues, not overspend, and begin to draw down in terms of obligations for the pension and provide relief to our firefighters and first responders. So those are two things in the short term that I would deal with. The long term kind of goes along with the development piece, and that is our multimodal / millennial housing that we need to deal with. You could probably list on your hands in terms of your workplace how many people drive into Sarasota County from another place. They may live in Northport, they may live in Venice, they may live in Parrish, they may live in Ellington. They come here to work and then they go home back to their communities and they spend their money in their homes. And they don't do it because they want to, they do it because they can't afford to. So we've got to address that in terms of reviving small businesses, giving young professionals and young families a place to live, work, and play. I think that's critical. Also in terms of transportation, the connectivity between the center of the community and downtown. If there were a transportation or a trolley system that will allow employees of Sarasota Memorial Hospital and some of our other major establishments to go into downtown to eat, to to shop, to handle things during their business hour, it would begin to increase our tax base because our city residents would be able to use the entire city of Sarasota. Because our transportation system is so limited, we're not able to enjoy all parts of Sarasota until we're off and on the way home. I think that that is a flawed situation that we need to be in, and to have that conversation with our county counterparts is critical. Also, in terms of getting cars off the street, we need to be able to address that, and not just for live and work, but for play. And so to the extent that we have these transportation conversations, we can begin to fill in the gaps to determine where we need services and move forward. So I think that's going to be a long-term goal that flows throughout what happens with the City Commission, but we've got to address our transportation issue. If we don't, we're going to continue to have almost an internal segregation of our communities, and that goes totally against what we've talked about in terms of community planning and connectivity. So I think that those are important.
Thank you. So our last question, and Stan will be the first responder. We hear a lot about city and county governments not getting along. In what ways do the city and county governments get along? And what specific recommendations will you make to encourage that the city and county work well together when you are a city commissioner?
Give you a short historical perspective. I've covered the Sarasota city and county governments for 40 years. I was a cub reporter here in 1975, and I have watched city and county relations ebb and flow. But never in that 40-year span of time have I seen relations at such a low point. It's partially driven by cash. The county has continued to throttle back its donations to city affairs. They cut off their, if you call it, a subsidy for the maintenance of city parks. This year will be the last year the county will help pay for the rec in Newtown, the recreation center, the Robert Taylor Center. So they're cutting off their subsidies there. They have cut off, I'm still trying to tally up the amount per year that they have withdrawn from the city. And this sort of beggars the city, if you will, which then has to scrape together the money to mow the lawn, mow the grass in the parks and so forth. So with that said, what can be done and what is working well? What is working well, and some of you will laugh, but in the main, the stormwater issues are working well. The county is responsible for that citywide, and a lot of stormwater issues have been addressed. The city has pitched in for some. For instance, the St. Armand's Key drainage area, which used to be so chronic in heavy rains and high tides, has pretty much disappeared. Now we're going to go back and do the same thing on the road to